Hey everybody, Prophetic here, and I'm here to give you my thoughts on my Ubuntu Gnome challenge. It was pretty interesting, kind of fun, I would say. Times I really enjoyed it, and then other times I wanted to bash my head through a wall. Of course, I'm exaggerating, just a little, not by much. No, but this video is really just to kind of give you my take on from a first impression standpoint to installing some extensions and changing defaults, and then my overall summary of the implications of Gnome and Ubuntu and the future of the projects as a default experience for a generic Linux user. So, I think Gnome tried something cool. It falls short. It's trying to be more than the sum of its parts, but unfortunately, it's like death by 1,000 paper cuts. And to make it somewhat usable, to make it to what you like, you have to install extensions. And so you're really outsourcing your ability to make it usable through these third-party extension apps. And there's something fundamentally off about that to me. But looking past that, there is some benefits to that to some degree. And the question is it enough for you that the benefits outweigh the cons? And so, at least from the dock standpoint, it's pretty cool. The dash to dock menu or extension, I should say. So before my previous video, you can go back there and talk about where I talk about the defaults and the terrible default decisions, where I pretty much go into some theming issues, some things that are off about it. Even, some of the quirks like this, where in order for me to log out, I have to click once. And God forbid you give me a logout icon right here. God forbid that happens. Click again. Then click again. And then look what happens here. I gotta click 4 times to log out. And so, I guess for whatever reason, we're not worthy to get an explanation on why that is, or why that is overall, why they made the decision on user interface for Gnome desktops, why that is. We don't really get a good feel on that because we're not worthy, or we don't have the ability to grasp the next level designs of a desktop environment, and we just can't wrap our heads around it. And if we try to, our brains will melt. So they're probably saving us from utter destruction by not even sharing with us. But I kind of go into that, and I'm not going to go into the technical terrible decisions of the notifications and no desktop icons that they're going for, and I think 3.30. So I'm going to go into that. I'm just going to go into the one thing I really liked, and that was this function right here, the workflow here. The fact that I think they made it, the way they made it default goes a long way. And I said earlier, in another video, defaults matter. It really does, especially from a base this big of Gnome, and also their design implementation of the shading in the background. I love the way they do the shading, the spotlight type thing look to it. I love that. When you go to the menu, and this is me installing the community theme menu icon sets and overall design that was supposed to ship with 18.04 but didn't make the cut. I installed that and I really like it. Really nice. I like it a lot, and I wish it was default. I think it would have made it. It would soften the blow of my initial disappointment with the defaults. And the reason why I think defaults are important, and especially for a distribution like Ubuntu, and this is what it comes down to, guys. Like, you know, aside from Gnome and Ubuntu, you know, being separate projects and organizations, like you claim you're one of the biggest desktop environments, one of the oldest, being Gnome, and you're doing something, or Ubuntu Canonical is doing something, one of the most mainstream distributions, using Gnome, and you claim to be the Linux for human beings. Here's the tough thing about that. If you're going to make that claim, or if you used to make that claim, then you have to live up to it, and you have to do some things to make it way more usable, and make it for actual human beings. So the fact that the default Ubuntu launcher doesn't allow for the applications bar to be on the bottom left, when you put the bar on the bottom, is a really terrible design limitation. The fact that dash to dock has to do that for you, and you have to use that instead, takes away big time from that claim that you want to be Linux for human beings. You gotta have to do more than that. So that's my biggest gripe, is that if you're claiming to be the top distribution to make things easier for a new Linux user, then we have to hold your feet to the fire. I mean, we don't do this just for fun. We don't kind of crack on Gnome for, you know, laughs and giggles, even though it could be funny sometimes. But it's really just an indictment on the gap between who you say you are and to what you actually are. And that's a problem. It'd be one thing if this is Arch, or this is one thing if you say this and you're, you know, Gentoo. Like, we know you're a power user and you can change everything you want. You can change anything to anything, okay? It's magic. We get it. But this is Ubuntu. This is the thing that most people go to, aside from Linux Mint. Most people go to here. And so, a lot of people go to Ubuntu first before anything else. So that's a big problem. And it's so much of a problem that things like this really, really are kind of like, it adds up. This goes back to the thing of the death by 1,000 paper cuts. This person's asking about Gnome Terminal. Apparently, you can't make a default terminal in Gnome. What happened to this thing about options and choices in Linux community, where you can choose a desktop environment right for you, when you choose the apps that work for you, and it's like you can customize the things that you want to customize, and you can't change your default terminal? One of the largest desktop environments won't allow you to change your terminal? Eventually, no desktop icons? Eventually, no notification icons? How has this happened? How do we get here? How did we get here? Some of the solutions: Symlink it. Another solution: just keep your favorite terminal app in the Ubuntu dock start menu. Or you can configure Nautilus with this Python script or app thingy. And then when you're at least launching it from Nautilus, at least you can do that. So this is just, again, these small things add up, and it just isn't enough to make it work for me. And here's the sad part, and this is what kind of grinds my gears. Linus Torvalds had an issue with Gnome 3 as well. He talks about it being a one step forward and one step back kind of thing. I will agree. He was actually probably generous in that statement. I think maybe a little more than that. Might be like 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, or 4 steps back rather. You know, like, and things like this, like change the font sizes, no can do. Add extension, still broken. He wants to do something else with to fix something else, and goes to extensions.gnome.org, and oh, this thing says it's it's still not working. Lock screen button, where does that go? That's still an issue. And this whole concept of approaching an extension to fix things initially sounds really cool, and it's very it scratches on the surface of modularity, which I think is untapped potential there, but I won't go into that. That's for another video. But it just doesn't make the cut. And so it turns out to be a major pain, he says. What ends up happening is that a really magical way to customize your desktop breaks randomly, has no sane way to do it across machines. And when you update the system, it randomly breaks on you. So the end result, really cool idea, but it seems to have serious usability problems in practice. And the fact that they don't give you default, we don't give you the even the most basic tools to fix things, but you can hack around things with unofficial extensions, seems to be a total UX failure. Who do I need to enter Clownhorn here to get a standard font size and panel options, instead of going through unsupported and random extensions that look ugly as hell and break randomly? So the founder of the Linux kernel, creator of the Linux kernel, shares this gripe. And guess what year does he post this? 2012. I swear to God, he can probably do this today, type this up today, and it'll still apply. Of course, maybe some extensions are back now, and maybe others are not, though. And so, not specifically with these extensions, but in general, the concept is still an issue. That you can write this today, and it will still be a problem. Now, the Gnome Foundation, the Gnome Project, develops GTK3. And that's pretty much like what they do best, maybe. Maybe that's their thing. It's GTK3. Maybe it's not a desktop environment. The Gnome Project creates GTK3, and it takes other projects to do Gnome-like experiences justice. And Gnome Project, behind the Gnome desktop environment, was founded by this guy, Miguel de Casa, and also Federico Mena. And so Miguel himself, in 2013 I think it was, yes, 2013, mentions an article that he is leaving Linux for Mac. And why is it? Fragmentation of Linux as a platform, multiple incompatible distros, and incompatibilities across versions of the same distro. GTK lacks, backwards compatibility. And those were my 3 Mile Island Chernobyl reasons why he had to leave. And so I say all this to say that when you're one of the largest Linux communities, some of the most funding, most developers, there tends to be a shift in responsibility where you got to do right by your users. And you're not a indie shop where you can take these snobby stances on certain design philosophies. Like, that's what we have elementary. They are design snobs, and it's awesome. They're smaller. They can create something from what they're working on and make these stances and hardline issues. But you are one of the biggest things in the Linux community when it comes to desktop environments. You're working with some of the biggest distros, and it falls short. It falls short. And there is a price to be paid that the users pay. And so it's disappointing that the defaults are so crappy. To make it usable, you have to install extensions. And then from there, you're not even stable. You're not even stable. So I get it if you like Gnome. I can understand. I love how it's minimal. And when they get the menus, they could be a little like the title bars, the menu bars. They can be like a little on the bigger side, but they have it just right. The dimensions and the ratios of the text and the window size and the panels and the panes, like they have it. I think they have a great layout, but it just doesn't cut it. It just doesn't cut it in a functional standpoint. And when you're not even that stable and you take such a huge hit on resources, and then instead of giving people options for features that they can turn on and off, you remove them, and it's still an issue since 2012, then you have to wonder, are organizations and projects that are so big become our version of the bank systems that are too big to fail? You know, I know it's a silly analogy, but is that the case where they got so big, they have such a large user base, they got historical momentum of previous releases and projects like, you know, Gnome 2 and enterprise backing, you know, those things, that they're just so big that they don't have to care about what we say. They don't have to care about how we feel, and they don't have to explain these things. And if that's the case, how are they different from other projects and other proprietary services? How are they different in that sense? And so okay, that was probably a little too harsh, but I can get behind someone saying, hey, I like using Gnome for me, and that's, you know, it works for me. I just can't get behind someone being an actual like proactive evangelist or fanboy. You can have your personal reasons liking it, but don't try to make it seem like it's the place to be. Gnome, it'll be a long time before Gnome will be something I will use. It has a lot of changes, a lot of different things it needs to do better, from not just a design standpoint, but functionality, and also a community standpoint. Because that's important too. And it's your community base that makes you who you are. So if you're not really respecting the users, I can't really respect you as well. That's my Gnome Challenge results. Hope you enjoyed it. Leave me a comment and keep it civil. And catch you in the next one.